Okay. So, this is a little different, isn't it? I decided to try doing movie reviews more through YouTube than Twitch. I'd always used Twitch for a while, but I ran into some issues with Twitch, and yeah, I think I'm gonna try this out. We're gonna see how this works. I haven't set up all the presets and everything for YouTube yet, but I figured, why not? Let's try it out. Because for the longest time, I've only done them on YouTube, and I think I mean on Twitch, and I think it's funnier. But I think Twitch is, I think I might use that more for gaming now. So I'm just gonna use this time to talk about some movies here. Also, I haven't done a lot of reviews here in a while, so I thought I'd fix that here. Well, we'll see how well this goes. I honestly haven't streamed in a while here. The last time I streamed here was with when I was doing like a cross stream with Mob Crush, and that didn't work out as well. So without further ado, let's get to the reviews. So, let's get to it. I got my notes up here, and we'll get right into the reviews. For those who've only seen the reviews I do on Twitch, I always like set it up as like, oh, I'm going to prep for it, get my notes and all that, show the trailer, and then I realize even though other Twitch streams show clips, we got the channel taken down for one. So whatever, we'll just switch over here and we'll just do it. Like, I don't even show clips on here anymore. Like, I kind of can, depending on how you dice it up, but it's too much of a headache, so we'll just go through it. We'll just do it the old-fashioned way without clips, which we can do. Alright, so we got my notes up here, and let's talk about Mortal Kombat. So Mortal Kombat, the latest video game adaptation. Now, the thing is, like, what's weird about this Mortal Kombat is that it feels like it's the mirror universe version of, like, the 1995 film. Because if you might remember, the first movie adaptation of Mortal Kombat, the 1995 film, it was, it didn't have the fatalities so much. It was rated PG-13, so there wasn't a lot of blood or gore or anything like that. But it did have some personality. It did have some charm. And it did have an energy to it where I actually really dug it. Where, despite everyone talking about, like, the video game curse, and I've gone over this, I actually still have some affection for that film. Unfortunately, with Mortal Kombat, the new Mortal Kombat we've got here in 2021, it's like, yes, for those who have come to this film looking for the blood and the gore and the violence and the action, it's there. It's staged pretty well. It does get pretty creative at times, and it does reference a lot of stuff from the video games. However, that all comes at the sacrifice of not just personality, but story as well. And that's really a shame, because I think there could have been a lot to this film. Like, for instance, like, this film opens up amazingly. I love the way it starts off, where you have this feud that goes on, like, in I believe it's like the 1600s, between like Bihan, this Chinese warrior who can make frost from his hands, so Sub-Zero, who has a bitter feud with Hanzo Hasashi, this great warrior. And they have this bitter feud, which isn't elaborated on too much. It's just basically Bihan wants to wipe out the Hasashi clan because of some family dispute. We get that. So, and I like the way it's set up. Like, the fight that they have is brutal. Like, there's great pathos. There's great revenge that Hanzo wants to get on Bihan. And it actually kind of fools you within, like, because, like, this is the very first scene. It almost makes you think, wow, is this actually gonna take place in ancient Japan? Have this view between, like, this Chinese and this Japanese warrior? Because that's a really great story. I like the way this is all set up. It's really cool. But then I could sense something bad was going to happen once the titles came up, and we're immediately given this text prologue about Outworld. The Outworld realm is trying to invade the Earth realm, so they have to have a tournament to decide, the fate of what's going to happen to the Earth realm. And it's like, well, wait a minute, why are they telling us all this? with just text. Can we show this a little bit better? And that's when it dawned on me really quickly. Oh no, this, if they're putting this in, like, and it feels like it was like put in like after the fact. It feels like there's going to be too much going on in this film to explain anything. And unfortunately, that is the case with Mortal Kombat. This is a film that, like, to its credits, like, it's under 2 hours, so it doesn't spend a whole lot of time wasting away with, meandering between fights. There's not, like, a huge amount of exposition. But the problem is, it can't really explain anything, so that when it goes from fight A to fight B, it's just kind of like a exposition dump and personalities that really don't resonate because everyone else spends so much time talking about this tournament. And it feels like there's a lot that you could build on here. There's a lot. Like the thing is, like, I like the character that we follow of Cole Young, who's basically a descendant of the Hasashi clan. And as a descendant, he's basically, it's basically on his family to compete in the tournament. So, and he's a failed MMA fighter. He has a family, there's a lot of stuff in him that you want to root for, but he doesn't really have much of a personality, unfortunately. Like, and the more characters that we meet, you think there might be some more character there. Like he meets Jax, a soldier, takes an interest in him. Not really a lot to him. Sonya Blade, a woman who's basically devoted her life to tracking down Mortal Kombat and figuring it out. Outside of that, she doesn't really have a whole lot to her. To be honest, the only character in this entire film who has any personality is Kano, and he's unfortunately wasted. Like, Kano, they establish as this mercenary. He can't be trusted. He's a bad guy. He insults everyone. He's the only one who has any personality here because everyone else is taking this info so seriously and so to heart that it just doesn't come off. Like, it's weird. Like, it spends this whole time trying to make it's this earnest and gritty action film, but then it also wants to have all these like Easter eggs and references. It wants to crack jokes here and there. Like, hey, isn't it funny that Mortal Kombat is misspelled? Like, oh, they couldn't even spell combat right. Look at the K. But it doesn't really have time to develop any of these characters, and that's a big problem because this film just keeps throwing characters at you one at a time. Not even one at a time. Like, they throw them in like chunks. There's at one point where we're given like a little bit of an idea, like, okay, we're gonna see this lady, has the big teeth. She's gonna come about. There's a reptile that's gonna come about. But then in like the next section of the film, where we're introduced to Cabal and like a handful of other characters, and once they show up on screen, I'm just like, why are you introducing them now and giving them all this? And it's like watching this film, like, I was just baffled the whole time. And it's not baffled out of like, trying to comprehend the games and comprehend its lore. Because I played enough of the games where it's like, yes, I know Outworld's bad. And yes, I know that guy with like the gas mask and the blades is Cabal. But I'm like, why are you introducing these characters now? And why are we getting so little of Outworld? Like, I'm not looking for a lot here. And I know, like, a lot of people's defense of this film is going to be, like, it's a turn your brain off film. And it's like, and it depends, like, how much you're willing to turn your brain off here, because, like, the violence is a lot of fun. I really like that stuff. But the in-between sections are just dead. Like, the dialogue here is delivered so dry and blandly that scenes where a character looks at something and says, oh, that's badass, or Jack says like, oh man, these arms are mother effers, they don't really carry an impact. Especially like when they say these lines after like they commit fatalities and stuff like that. And it doesn't have that punch. Like, I mean, this is based on an over-the-top video game. It should feel like an over-the-top film. It should feel like there's more violence. Like, there's some violence and there's some gore, and it gets a little clever here and there, but I feel like it should go more over the top. I feel like it should have more ridiculousness, more silliness. And if you're going to have this much character, give something more to them. Like, I mentioned how much I like Kano, who's played by Josh Lawson. He's got a great accent. He's got a great look to him. I love his attitude, and I love how he's a turncoat for this story. Pretty obviously a turncoat about, like, midway through. But he's wasted in this film. Like, you feel like this might be a character who might get some redemption, that he might have an arc. But nope, he's just a bad guy who likes doing bad stuff, which is really a shame because it feels like he's the only character who has a proper arc here. Because everything else just feels so stale and like pushed into the film. Like, we need to have these characters and we're going to address them as such, and and try to like push this whole tournament. Like, Raiden shows up as basically like, I am Raiden. And the thing is, I mentioned that opening bout between Bi-Han and Hanzo, but the thing is, like, eventually, yes, they are going to become Sub-Zero and Scorpion, but they become so, like, inexplicably, like, just in the present day, they just automatically show up with like the masks on, and they just declare them. They literally have the line where they declare themselves, "Call me Sub-Zero." And then once Hanzo shows up, he comes back from the dead, from like the depths of hell, and basically says, "Call me Scorpion." It's like, really? So yeah, there's a lot of things they gotta like. It seems like they just try to force this stuff like in from the games. And it creates this sensation where it just feels like it's a checklist, where it's just like, okay, fans are going to be looking for this in the film. They want to see Goro, they'd like to see Cabal, they want to see Scorpion and Sub-Zero fight. They want to see this one move where Sub-Zero will freeze his entire body and then shed it like a skin of ice. They want to see Scorpion fling out the spear. They want to see him breathe fire. They want to see Liu Kang do the kicks. And you get all that stuff. But what else? Like, it's just, like, I mean, I know a lot of people are going to say, like, you have to turn your brain off for this film, but you really have to turn your brain off, because the one thing that you would think that you'd have to deliver in a Mortal Kombat film, where the most important thing that you're talking about in this film, the one thing that every character is talking about, is the one crucial aspect of this entire story, is the fighting tournament. And you don't get to the fighting tournament. Like... They keep talking, it's like, this is the ultimate fight for the fate of Earth, and it's going to be the most important thing in the world, and the film doesn't even have time for it. Like, about halfway through, they're still talking about this fight and how they're training for it, and how, like, they have to master their superpowers that are going to come about because they're the chosen ones, and they keep on saying, like, you got to train for the tournament, we're going to have this tournament, and it's halfway through the film, you're like, you're not getting to a tournament. You wasted so much time with a lot of these scenes that don't build up to anything. It's just like a series of fights. And if that was going to be your whole goal, fine. But why do you keep building up this tournament? Like, I mean, obviously, they're talking about this so that they can set it up for another film. But at that point, don't you feel cheated? Don't you feel like you've just been watching a prologue and not the actual film that's going to build up to? And also, man, if they really want to be scummy, Warner Bros. Wants to do this, they'll not even make the tournament happen in the next film. They'll maybe focus on the first half of it, but never finish it, and you'll have to come back for the third film so they can have their Mortal Kombat trilogy for the long haul. And it's just really depressing that the film would go in this route where it doesn't feel complete. It feels like it has to set up all this stuff. Like, this film can't even wait until the credits are done so that it can have its own sequel bait of having Johnny Cage. Like, the film ends on a dud by just saying, oh, we're going to go look for Johnny Cage now. Maybe we'll have a tournament in the next film. And... just so much stuff that comes out inexplicably. Like, they introduce characters at random. Like, Kung Lao comes out of nowhere. We've spent a whole lot of time introducing characters, and then once a fight starts happening, oh yeah, by the way, Kung Lao pops up. He's Liu Kang's cousin. It's like, wait, where did he come from, and where was he this whole time? Not to mention this film, like, and I don't like using this term a lot, but it really does have a Deus Ex Machina with how Scorpion comes in to save the day out of nowhere. Like, we understand, like, I mean, video game lore dictates that that Hanzo will become Scorpion and come back from the dead, but then nothing. like nothing to build it up. It's just like, oh, by the way, yeah, here's a Scorpion fight. And I wish I could like this film more, because the fights are really cool. The gore and the blood, all of it's there that, a lot of Mortal Kombat fans are going to like. And I've mentioned this in my review. This is the ultimate, like, they said the thing film. There's so many moments where it's like, they said fatality. Oh, they said Kano wins. That I remember this move from the games. They did this move from the games. Oh, they reference this thing. Oh, is it funny how much they point out how the name is misspelled? And for some fans, that'll be enough, but there's so many scenes are dead in between here that it feels like a like full motion video that they used to have in video games for like the cinematic sequences where they weren't very well acted and they were kind of corny and cheesy, but they just got the, you know, from point A to point B, and it just makes you want to skip them. That that I mean, I watched this in the theater and I felt like, you know, I probably should have watched this at home just so I could skip through a lot of this bland dialogue that goes nowhere with it. So I wish I could recommend this film more. I mean, if you're just coming in for the action, the violence, and you're a Mortal Kombat fan, and you just go in there with like your checklist of like, you know, okay, as long as the film does this, it'll be great. The film will be great for you. However, if you're seeking any connective tissue here, or any personality, or charm, or coherence, or actually sticking to the tournament that the film keeps talking about and then never gets to, man, you're going to be disappointed. It's so all over the place that I wish I could like it more. But it just, you know, you get your fatalities, but you trade in all that. You trade in all the personality and charm that the other film had, the 1995 film, for this new version. And it's honestly, it doesn't really feel like a trade that's worth it. Because I could forgive a film, you know, not having, you know, like everything from a video game if it had charm, if it had personality, if it went somewhere. But as it stands, this Mortal Kombat film just feels like it's just fan service and little more, because I think fans are really only going to get the most from this, while people who are never played a Mortal Kombat game or not familiar with the lore are just going to come into this and be like, what's Outworld? Where did Kung Lao come from? Why are we introducing Cable at the last minute? And why didn't we get to the fighting tournament? Like, fans will probably say, oh, well, you know, they set up a franchise, we can get it to the next film. But it's just maddening that the film couldn't be more than just a prologue. And I wish it were better, because I do love the fights here. I think there's something to them. For a first-time director, Simon McCod, I think his name is. This is his first film, and as far as I'm concerned, it's a good film. It's just held back by a script that doesn't really have time for anything, and that has to adhere to so much of this video game lore and Easter eggs that it can't really flourish as its own action film. And I wish it could, because it's like it's almost there. If it just had some personality, if it just had some coherence and didn't waste the audience's time so much, especially for a film that's under 2 hours, there could have been something here. So, yeah, it's a very, very disappointing film. How I wish I could love it more. You know? How I wish. Okay, so, got that out of the way. Oof. A little heated there. Alright. Get to talk about Nobody here. Film Nobody. I'm not talking about Nobody. Actually, you know what? Let's actually talk about Better Days. I saw that in the chat. We should probably get to that. Because, like, I know I'm going to, like, get all flustered and angry with, like, the other action films we've got on this list for today. So, we'll talk about Better Days. Let me get up my notes here. Let's see. Where is it here? Okay. Got it in my notes. All right. So, Better Days is a high school drama. Well, it's kind of like Arrested Adolescence type of drama. So it takes place in China, which it's within like the setting of like a high school mostly. What it focuses on more than anything, though, is the fact that the final high school exams are coming up for a lot of high school seniors in determining what they're going to do with their futures. And it and I love how it's framed here as being like such a huge part of the culture that everyone focuses on, like everyone is talking about. Like, they go to this school, and right in the courtyard, giant banners that are saying, like, let's do our best, crush those exams. And then you have like these like electronic billboards that are saying like so many days until the exams. You have teachers who keep talking about how, not just like stuff that you got to study, but having like this warrior spirit, like they're going off to war. Like, these exams are going to determine your entire worth of society, and that it's all on you to, to make this work. Which is a lot of stress to put on teenagers. And to couple with that stress, this high school has a big problem with bullying. It has like the popular girl cliques who basically bully other girls and just makes their lives a nightmare. And this and there's this, and like the inciting incident of all this is that one girl who is bullied commits suicide by jumping off the balcony into the courtyard, killing herself. And it's like all the students are kind of like shocked by this. They all kind of keep their distance, though. All the teachers say, back to classes, focus on your studies. Don't let this hinder you. But the thing is, it kind of weighs on the mind of Chin Yan. And Chin Yan is this woman who's kind of like quiet. She keeps to herself mostly, but she kind of like takes a little bit of sympathy in this woman by coming up to her body and basically like covering it, basically trying to show some sense that she understands what this girl might have gone through. And the thing is, she doesn't really have that much time to focus on stuff like that because she is so engrossed in her studies. Because it's really the most important thing. Like, her mother has debt collectors coming after her. Like, she's not at home at all. She's struggling to make money, and she's relying, basically, everything is on Chen's shoulders to make sure that she passes this exam, makes a lot of money, and can help out her mother. Everything is on her. That she's just, there's a lot of weight on her shoulders, and she can barely deal with it. And the fact of the matter is that, everything hinges on these exams, that even the investigation into the suicide seems brief, like really brief. Like, they interview like a few students and like those who might have been involved, but the investigation doesn't really produce any results of anyone to accuse anybody of anything. And eventually, even the interrogations get halted because they say, well, these kids got exams. We got to get them back to studying. We don't really have a lot of time for interrogation and this stuff. It was probably just a suicide. So Chen immediately feels like, okay, I can't trust the authorities if I end up being targeted. And sure enough, after that girl commits suicide, Chen becomes basically the next target for the popular girls to harass in really vitriolic ways. Like, it starts off just small, just like taking pictures of her or making fun of her. And then it eventually escalates to them finding her in the street and kind of basically like bullying her, cutting her hair, and ripping off her clothes, essentially raping her. So basically Chen feels like she can trust no one until she meets Lu Bishan, who is basically like a 20-year-old who is basically like a street gangster. He works in illegal dealings. He tries to find a way to make money, and he's basically a bad boy. And the thing is, like, he realizes that he lives a violent life, that he can't really get close to anybody. So when Chen actually takes pity on him and tries to like stick up for him, she can't really do that, but she tries to basically get these guys off his back. He realized that, well, maybe I can trust Chen. Maybe there's something to her. And the thing is, Lu realizes that he can't really be that much involved with her life because he knows that he's bad news. He knows that he is down a dark path that he can't really come back from, and he doesn't want to pollute Chen in the process. Because he's already dealing with like tons and tons of scummy people, and because he cares so much for Chen, that he wants to keep her at a distance. Now, of course, as film goes on, they develop a little bit more of like not quite like a low key, but almost kind of like a like somewhat somber romance that kind of comes about as it's staged as kind of like a forbidden romance too, because they live in a part of China that has like a lot of security cameras about. Like, Lu realizes that he can't really be seen with her in public, otherwise the cops will find some association. So it basically keeps a distance from her at all times when they're not alone together. And eventually, what makes their relationship a little bit more strained is the fact that at one point, Chen has basically been pushed too far. Like, she's had her hair cut, she's had her clothes ripped off, she's been bullied relentlessly, that at one point she accidentally kills one of the popular girls. And so, Lu basically basically helps her clean this mess up, and then when the body is found, he's going to take the fall for her. So he sets this up so that once the cops come to him, he will set it up so like, yeah, I did it. I killed this girl, throw the book at me. Chen had nothing to do with this. In fact, I don't even know Chen. Who is she? I've never met her before. And of course, the cops, and the thing is, like, the cops aren't really buying it because they believe there's foul play here. And so, like, Liu does his best to basically say I'm the bad guy, while Chen basically tries to say that she doesn't know Liu. And in the process, however, it does mean that, Liu is gonna, serve prison time, and and Chen realizes that this is like a huge sacrifice for him. And Liu goes the extra mile to ensure that, that it seems like he's a bad guy who might be targeting Chen. But the thing is, like, I like the way that, like, this film could have easily just cut off at the moment when Liu takes the fall and Chen goes, gets her grades back, and she has good grades and she goes off to college. And that she basically waits for him. But I like the fact that the film doesn't stop there. Like, it actually asks this question about accountability. And I like the fact that, it might be like a little bit of mixed messaging here, but I like the fact that the cops are a bit concerned that they know that Chen is trying to make Liu take the fall and that Liu's willing to do it, but also realize that, they want to try to force that, if you do this is going to weigh on your conscience. And I like how, like, how the cops also admit that, they don't understand why teenagers would do this, because basically they admit, like, well, we're not young people. We don't know why they would do this. And I also like kind of the kind of like despair that the young people feel towards, authorities when they have these accidents that can destroy their entire lives. Like, the cops constantly ask Chen, why didn't you come to us when you were bullied? Why didn't you come to us when this happened? And Chen is basically like, I can't trust you people. You saw what happened when that bullied girl committed suicide. You barely did anything. Why would I trust any of you? So it kind of goes back and forth in, like, this questioning of authority and how much, young people feel that they have, that they can trust, others, when, like, bullying is such a difficult thing to deal with, where even if you have the evidence, even if you feel like you've done nothing wrong, even if it was an accident, so much ranges, on just your perceptions within the culture, that there's this desperation where you have to cover everything up, where, like, you have to take the fall for someone, because that's the only way you can feel that you can get ahead in life. And I gotta admit, I like the way that this film kind of draws out on this aspect, and it does take a very unconventional route in how it ends with this material. Like I said, it could have cut off at, like, the third act, but that fourth act just feels so crucial in addressing these issues in a very mature way, and also portrays, I like the way that it portrays young people. It's not just being passionate enough to let people take the fall, but also show accountability and realize that they have to do better on their own, more or less. Because I like the fact that Chen Yan is basically, she doesn't have her mother. She doesn't have anyone in her life except Liu to look up to. So I like the dynamic between Chen and Liu. They do have this sort of, like, almost kind of like understated romance to them that I really dug. I like the way it's edited too. Like, I love how we don't really learn about the accident until after the fact, once Liu has already, committed to, like, getting rid of the body and stuff like that. And just, like, the overall atmosphere, like, you can tell, like, you can sense the pressures all around Chen, where everything hinges on this exam, and if you don't pass it, it feels like the end of your life. If you do pass it, it feels like everything is going to be coming up roses. But at the same time, Chen asks herself, there's got to be more to life than this. There's got to be more to it than this. Like, it can't just, because, like, one of the things that Chen has kind of learned from studying for these exams is that as long as you focus on the exams, focus on your studies, and just let everything else in your life, basically all the bullying and harassment and torment, as long as you ignore all that and just pass your exams, everything will be fine. And there's a very dangerous thinking there. And I like the fact that it's mentioned early on and then is proven wrong by the end, realizing that, no, there is more to life than exams. Like, you can pass them, but there's still going to be moral weight on your conscience and an accountability that you're going to feel that goes beyond just grades and jobs and stuff like that. So I really like the direction that this film took in addressing both, like, bullying and, like, the culture that forces a lot on teenagers and the weight that a lot of the unfortunate kids have to take on. So it's a very, very bittersweet film. I like the romance that develops here. It feels genuine. And I like how it basically lingers. Like, this film is around like 2.5 hours, and it spends its time to make you care about these characters and their plight. And also feel like the grueling nature of it. Like, the interrogation scenes are perfectly edited, but also go on for a long time, where you can kind of like feel the drain on both characters as they try to keep up this bit. So yeah, I really loved Better Days, and I think it's just a well-made film about and a film with teeth about youth culture that I really think is going to resonate for a lot of people. Let's see. The ending had the hands of Chinese censorship because the government won't let people cheat the police. And I sense that. I mean, like, yeah, it's a Chinese production, so I kind of assumed that, it wouldn't let them get away with this. But to its credit, I do like the fact that that Chen doesn't feel she can trust the police at all. So, like, it's kind of like, it seems like a way that they cheated to get in there, saying, like, yes, we'll prove that justice is served in the end, but while we do that, we're also going to question the range of the police. And I also like the fact that the police also realize that, look, they don't understand young people, which I mean, like, it's, you walk this weird line of, like, how much of this is fantastical and how much of this feels relatable that adults should hit. I mean, I've had this, like, issue with, like, the overlap that it would have with, like, the moral messaging within stuff like, Falcon and Winter Soldier to a similar extent. But yeah, that whole aspect of, recognizing that young people have a different mindset and a different outlook on law and, what is placed on their shoulders. I really dug that aspect a lot. So yeah, it's kind of like a compromise. It seems that they would do that for the censorship. Yeah. At the last minute. Like, cause it's weird. Like, it does feel like it kind of robs it of that perfect time to end the romance. Cause, like, that scene towards the end of the climax where Chen and Lu are basically having that moment where Lu has to see, like, he's raping Chen to try to kill her, and the cops have to take him in. Like, it's that great slow motion bittersweet sequence where they basically have to depart. That seems like a good scene to end on, but yeah, of course, they don't want them to outsmart the cops. I will say, though, it does feel like they made that ending too kind of, like, neutral, I guess. I feel like it should, like, have, like, a little bit more, and I know it's probably the censorship, it feels like there should be more anger in that ending too. And you can kind of sense that. I mean, if you peer close, you can see it. You can see the anger coming through. I just wish there was, like, a little bit more, because this film does have teeth. For a Chinese film about Chinese youth, it doesn't, like, I've seen so many Chinese films that are just, like, and of course, because a lot of Chinese films go through lots of, like, censorship boards and stuff like that, and all this pruning here and there. I did like the fact that this felt like a film that had teeth, more biting on that nature than you usually see. All right, I'll get to next here. Go to the latest film, Nobody. But that is a good point, Biffer. I am glad you brought that up. Like the fact. All right. Hang on, I gotta get some notes up here for this. Whew. All right. Okay, so now we're on to Nobody, a John Wick joint. Kind of. It's written by the creators of John Wick. All right. Let me get my notes all up here. All right. Whew. Yeah, that's covering better days. Yep. So, Nobody stars Bob Odenkirk as Nobody, or at least he says he's Nobody. His real name is Hutch Mansell, or at least that's the name that he has chosen. Who's basically, he seems like just like an average, middle class, middle aged guy. You know, he's got a family, 2 kids, lives in the suburbs, works in, doing accounting for a shop that he's hoping that he can own one day. And just day out, every day is the same. Coffee, garbage goes out, hit the subway, come home, go to bed, same thing, day after day. Quick montage establishes that. And then one day, Hutch has his home attacked by some masked criminals who basically come in, try to rob him. And Hutch has a moment to beat them with a golf club. And he has that moment, and basically he pulls back. He says, no, you know what? I can't do this. Now, the way that the film initially stages that, it seems like, that Hutch is basically a loser because he didn't do it. Everyone looks down on him for doing this. His son looks down on him. His coworkers look down on him. His boss is kind of like, man, that sucks, but, I'm rooting for you, but maybe you should have done something. So basically feels like Hutch needs to get some revenge. And I like the fact, one of the things I like is that this isn't kind of one of those, this is written by one of the creators of John Wick. And it does, and for a lot of people, you will see a lot of shades of John Wick here, because it's established that Hutch, later on it's established that Hutch actually was a secret agent who worked for I believe the CIA as an assassin. So basically he has put this life ahead of him, and he's basically pulled out of retirement when he's assaulted. And I like the fact that I kind of like the fact that he has to pull back, that moment where he almost could, beat up those robbers. It feels like that's a moment where it feels like, man, do I really want to get back in this lifestyle? And then he pulls back. But eventually, something, this sense that, he has to be more complete rages within him, that he basically goes to seek out those criminals who stole from him and tries to get his revenge. He comes in their house, punches them, asks for his watch back, which they stole, and basically just gets very angry with them about having everything returned to him. Even stuff that he doesn't think that he's lost. And what I kind of like about that scene is that he eventually realizes that, look, these robbers were just people who were desperate. At one point he realizes that these people, they have a baby, their baby isn't doing well, they need anything they can to survive. And Hutch basically leaves feeling like, damn, I made the wrong call. I shouldn't have targeted these people. What the hell is wrong with me? However, that with that rage still coursing through him, Hutch later gets on a bus, and when a gang of young people starts assaulting this young woman, or basically, making insulting remarks on her, and these guys had just gotten in a car crash recently, so they're dangerous. Hutch basically unloads on them. He pulls the driver off the bus, look, get out the bus here. I'm going to beat the crap out of these guys. In a really cool fight, actually. He punches them out. He strangles them with, the little cord you pull on the bus to get off at, a certain stop. They get thrown out windows. He beats them over the head with, the pipes on the... Not those pipes, those little, cylinders on the bus that you hold on to. Pretty creative scene. And then, of course, one of the people that he beats up just happens to be... the son of a bunch of Russian mobsters. Like I said, a lot of people who have watched John Wick are going to see a lot of crossover here. And of course, once the Russian mobsters realize this, they're angry. Now, the Russian kid that Hutch assaulted, he's still alive. He's still breathing. I mean, Hutch basically had to, he basically, hurt his throat and had to slit his throat open so that he could still breathe. But he was still breathing last time he saw him. But unfortunately, the Russian mafia all start coming after him now. And basically, the film goes into full-on action mode here. Hutch gets his family to safety. He sets his house ablaze so he can, fight off most of the Russians. And basically targets the, the Russians, secret, what's the right word for it? Like their secret bank of like all their valuables of like art and money and all that, and basically burns it to the ground and starts this war with them. And then basically it's a standard, like, like the Russians send everything they can after Hutch, and Hutch basically have to find numerous ways and weapons to dispatch them. And by the time it gets to that point, like it does get, it's still really violent. It's still really like giddy. And I love this sensation of this kind of like tongue-in-cheek humor that it has with it, where it's trying to be humorous, but it never feels like it's, like winking to the camera. Like it's always trying to seem like it have like this, like it always feels like it has this genuine flow to what's happening here. I also like the fact that by the climax of the film, you have Hutch's family, like his half brother is played by RZA, who's great with a sniper rifle, and his father is played by Christopher Lloyd, who's great with a shotgun. And indeed, by the end of the picture, you get to see Bob Odenkirk and Christopher Lloyd and RZA all together fighting off a whole bunch of mobsters. And on that level, I actually really enjoyed the film. Like, think about that. You have Bob Odenkirk, RZA, and Christopher Lloyd all killing a bunch of mobsters in really creative ways. Like, RZA uses his sniper rifle to kill, like, 3 of them at once. Christopher Lloyd has, like, this great little, like, fake out where it seems like he's just, like, he can't move in the retirement home, and then just reveals that under that blanket he's sitting with, he's got a shotgun, and he's really clever about stuff. They set up all these little kind of, like, Home Alone-style traps of explosives, and use protective glass for like shielding and stuff like that in really clever ways. Also, as a little bit of a bonus, you don't get to see him in action, but you do get a mustachioed Michael Ironside in the film, just for a little. As I liked it as a treat. Like, he doesn't do much, but I liked seeing him in the film. Now I think like this film, if you take it too much on the nose, like I do think it has some questionable elements of how it perceives like Hutch's need for violence that kind of comes off weird. Like there seems to be this element that, like, in the first act of the film, it seems like Hutch has to prove himself as a man, that he has to basically go after robbers. Like, now it's kind of dispelled by the moment that Hutch targets the robbers who took his watch, but then like the rest of them just like goes in like standard action mode. But I feel like it kind of like forgets that. Like it still kind of feels like it's on the table and that it should be questioned a little bit more. But by that point in the film, it's just having fun with just like violence and gore. But a little bit of gore here and there, yeah. And on that level, and just like an action level, it's fun, and it does have just enough here to avoid being like a John Wick film. Like if I were to point out like a key difference between John Wick and Nobody, it's that Nobody feels like it's trying a bit more for humor. Like John Wick, it has its humor here and there, but it's kind of more inexplicable. Like the humor from John Wick mostly comes out of either the action or just small one-liners here. And with Nobody, it seems a little bit more progressive. Like the humor kind of builds a little bit more, where characters can get in a little bit more than one-liners for laughs here and there. Like RZA keeps saying, well, how I'm not going to help you out. I'm not going to help you out. Okay, I'm actually going to help you out. And Christopher Lloyd is just having fun. Just gets the shotguns and like, oh, I miss this. So much fun. Which is great to see. So yeah, I think there is some questioning about, like, especially within like the first act, about how you have to prove yourself as a man, that doesn't really go anywhere, and I don't feel should be left on the table. But for a film that doesn't really want to address it, and by the end just becomes like, you're not quite run of the mill, but like, I don't quite want to say like standard fun, but just like an enjoyable action film by that point. It gets the job done. Like, it's gritty, it's violent, it has fun, it's brilliantly shot here and there, and it's just a great dose of gritty violence, and also really fun just to see characters like Bob Odenkirk and Christopher Lloyd, characters you wouldn't expect to be in like very gritty, violent action films. Just seeing them in this light is just fun. Just really fun to see him like that. So I had quite a bit of fun with this film. Alright. That's Nobody. What's next? We got Mortal Kombat, we got Nobody, we got Better Days. How about Godzilla vs. Kong? Yeah. Let's try that. Okay, let me get my notes up here. Write a bit of notes. All right. And the coffee's gone cold. All right. So next up, we have Godzilla versus Kong, the ultimate showdown. Godzilla last appearing in 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters, and King Kong last appearing in Kong Skull Island in 2017. Now, I like kind of how these American giant monster films are kind of like learning. Like they realize I think a lot of the directors are becoming more aware that, you know, the audience for these films, they are coming in for the fights. They're not coming in for the human story. And I think like King of the Monsters kind of didn't understand this as much because it did meander a bit too much here and there. Kong Skull Island, I think, mostly got this idea. I think they realized, look, you're not coming for the story of a photographer trying to prove himself, and you're not coming in there for, you know, a love story that develops there, or the story of a maddening soldier trying to prove himself. You know that everyone came here to see King Kong and giant monsters brutalize some humans and then attack each other. And you got that in the film. And Godzilla vs. Kong is strong enough to know that, you know, audiences are going to come for the title bout. And thankfully you get a lot of that. And I like how, like, the entire film is centered around, you know, what these monsters have in terms of their motivations. Like, they're not kept as, like, enigmas in the background that the humans are struggling to find out. Because, for the most part, like, I like that the fact that the humans in this world are more or less aware of what these monsters are doing and trying to figure them out better. So, like, King Kong is currently being held by the Monarch Corporation, who basically wants to keep King Kong in a cage away from Godzilla. Basically, protect King Kong from Godzilla, or more or less protect themselves from Godzilla and King Kong ever finding each other and fighting each other out for who will be like the big titan of the earth. At the same time, Godzilla is attacking the Apex Corporation. So Apex is basically like they've taken ownership of the skull of King Ghidorah from the last film, and basically want to try to develop their own giant monster. So while this is all kept under wraps, Godzilla's basically doing his own investigation, which involves destroying every Apex facility he can until he finds out, you know, where the skull's being kept. So while Godzilla's doing that, King Kong is actually trying to find his lost homeworld called the Hollow Earth, which apparently exists like inside the Earth in kind of like this lost world where gravity is weird and there's all these different monsters like this cross between like a snake and a stingray that can kind of like fly through the skies. And I like the little journeys that they have here. Basically, you know, they basically want to either like go home or protect themselves or assert themselves. I guess that would be the easiest way. It's like they're both trying to assert themselves as like the dominant forces on the planet. And then, of course, you know, they do have some great showdowns here and there. But, of course, like, you know, they come together when they have a common enemy in Mecha Godzilla, who shows up by the end of the film. Now, I like the way that the film is shot. It's a huge improvement from Godzilla King of the Monsters. Because in that film, we had to deal with seeing Godzilla in snowstorms, at night, during rainstorms, and you could barely see him. You could barely make him out. Now, if you want to make Godzilla a mystery and an enigma, you know, similar to like the 1950s film, I could dig that. I mean, hell, we did that with the 2014 film, where they didn't show a lot of Godzilla. They kept him mostly in the background and kind of like slowly brought him into the fold. You know, basically the rules of Jaws, right? You know, if you realize your monster isn't that big a thing, you hide them. And you try to like slowly build them up as the film goes along. But this is Godzilla versus Kong. You are going to have fights, you are going to have big showdowns between these giant monsters, and you want to be able to see everything. And thankfully, this film gives you all these great shots. Like the first bout between Godzilla and King Kong is when Godzilla is attacking King Kong, who's being transported by aircraft carriers. And they they attack each other during the day. I mean, it's a little bit cloudy, but there's plenty of sun. There's great long shots where you can see full body Godzilla and full body King Kong laying blows on one another. And you can also have your nice little close up and medium shots as well that get up close with the action. And I like the fact that the way it's set up, you don't lose track of the fight. You know perfectly well where Godzilla is at every time during the fight. You know where King Kong is at every time during the fight. And even scenes where you see him from the human perspective. Like there's a great shot where King Kong basically topples over an aircraft carrier that goes underwater. And we see, from the human perspective how it shifts into the water. But we still see King Kong. We still know where he is in the scene. And we still know where he is in the middle of the fight. It's not just like shaky cam and water's going everywhere and there's too cloudy out and you can't see anything. You know where everyone is at this time. And I think this works to the benefit of the final showdown of the film where they attack each other in Hong Kong. And they attack each other at night in the city. But much like Pacific Rim, the city is very well lit. So you can have great lighting here. There's a lot of like strong, like green and red lighting throughout the city that creates this great little like neon effect, which is amped up a little bit by the little bits of like synth in the soundtrack that really work very, very well. So that you can not only understand what's going on in the fight, but you can actually make out like some emotion in the characters. Like they don't just feel like blank slates. I mean, like Godzilla, there's only so much you can do with his attitudes and reactions. But thankfully, King Kong does have a lot of expression. And I mean, if you're going to root for anyone in this film, it's obviously King Kong, because King Kong is more sympathetic. He has more to fight for. He has more of a lineage. He has a lot more to his character. And he's most importantly, he's a lot more expressive. You can see his face. You can see when he feels pain and sadness and some, sense of relief and some anger and rage within him. That it's easier to feel for him. So I feel like the whole like team thing is silly, but if you're gonna count me in, obviously it's Team Kong, because King Kong seems to be able to better react with the humans. And speaking of the humans, you're probably wondering, well, why haven't I talked about any of the human characters in this film? Like, why haven't I? Isn't there anything to them? And yeah, there's some returning characters here. I mean, you have Millie Bobby Brown still around trying to track down whatever Godzilla's doing. You have kind of a fun role by Brian Tyree Henry, who plays this conspiracy theorist within Apex, who gets in a few. I mean, he's comic relief. He's there for some fun stuff. You kind of dig him. Then you have your standard action hero played by Alexander Skarsgård. You have Kyle Chandler returning as the concerned father who's still trying to like figure out what Godzilla's doing. And then you have like your standard bad guy, your corrupt CEO who doesn't realize he's gone too far until Mechagodzilla kills him. You have another turncoat who basically comes along for the ride and wants to, is only in it for personal gain. But these stories are mostly kind of smaller than they were in like previous films. Thankfully, they're smaller. Like it feels like this film has about the same kind of like large cast that the other films had, but uses the characters sparingly. Like, it realizes, look, these characters are only here more or less as ciphers for exposition about what's going to happen with King Kong and Godzilla. Now, sure, it would be nice if we could have more of a relatable human story, and we kind of have had that with the Godzilla film. A lot of people will be quick to point out that, yes, we had Shin Godzilla, a film where the human story was actually... I found the human story in Shin Godzilla a lot more interesting than the Godzilla story, because it focused more on the satire of the bureaucracy that goes into handling disasters. It was really interesting, and I felt like it had that same kind of resonance that the 1950s film, where it was trying to say something with Godzilla and how our culture reacts to disasters and how we function as a society and try to deal with it, and how the government has this weird outlook on it. It was very interesting and fascinating, but if we're doing giant monster films with big special effects, for an American audience, for big blockbusters, we're not going to have that. So you're just going to get these kind of like standard stories for the human characters. And on that level, all I can really expect from these types of films on that level, because they're never going to, go that far with, making characters more compelling than that. You just want good fights. And on that level, I actually really enjoyed the film. I got a lot of cool fights in there. The fight scenes were fun. The film delivers exactly what it promises. I mean, it's Godzilla versus King Kong. There's not really going to be much of a huge human story that I think a lot of people are going to be coming in for. But I think the other thing too is that I like the way that it's staged and like the conclusion it comes to, even though it's kind of one of those like kind of maybe the real Godzilla versus Kong were the friends we made along the way. That type of deal. So like anyone coming in this film hoping that, Godzilla or King Kong is going to win and they're going to have their own debates and stuff like that. I personally don't care who's the stronger monster here, because ultimately it doesn't matter. That whole fight is going to be mutable by whoever's directing it, whoever's writing it, and whoever, however Warner Brothers positions it. Obviously, for Warner Brothers' position, they want to stage this so they can have more films. So obviously, both aren't going to die. Or if they do die, they're going to come back to life some weird way. Which kind of begs the question. Maybe you could have, go further with it. Because then you could kill them off. And well, I'm speculating here. But for what the film is, for just being little more than just special effects fights and chaotic action, it's shot well. It's fun. It has a great soundtrack. It has some amazing sights with like the hollow earth, with like the shifting gravity. Kong gets some cool stuff with like his energy powered axe, and Godzilla does more of his fire atomic breath and stuff like that. The scenes are great. The action is pretty fun. It's big. It's bold. It's the type of fun stuff you want to see on the big screen. And it thankfully delivers on what it promises. So I feel like for giant monster films within like the American blockbuster market, we've kind of gotten there. We've kind of like figured out how to make them work. Now, hopefully, maybe we can, learn from Shin Godzilla and have like more of a human story the next time around. Because honestly, where can you go from here next? Are you like? I mean, I suppose you could do like a tag team. I suppose you could do like something like Destroy All Monsters, or you could have Godzilla and Kong teaming up to fight a reincarnated Ghidorah, or or bring Mothra and have Mothra in the mix so that Mothra, King Kong, and Godzilla could all fight King Ghidorah or something like that. But that's all speculation. That might happen. Heck, it seems like it might happen. I mean, this film has been doing really well in the box office, so who knows what could happen next. But yeah, in terms of Godzilla versus Kong, I dug the fight. It's a fun fight. Giant monsters. What do you know? Oh boy. Now we have to talk about Justice League. Oh, Justice League. Zack Snyder's Justice League, of course, yes. Okay, so how do we get into this? How do we do it? Well, I guess some I guess perhaps some history is in order here. So let's divulge into this. Okay. So Warner Brothers wanted to make a Justice League movie. They were establishing their own DC cinematic universe, the DC extended universe, if you will. So they basically wanted to have everything interconnected. They're going to go on from Man of Steel, and they did Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad, and then Wonder Woman, and then Justice League. So while they were making Justice League, it came about at a very chaotic time. Basically, Warner Brothers was basically trying to like wrestle away films from their directors to retool them. They realized that oh man, something isn't working here. These aren't testing well. We've got to like regroup here. Like the Marvel films are like kicking our ass. We got to do something. So they wrestled away a bunch of films from some of the directors. The first one that comes to mind obviously is Suicide Squad. David Ayer, after with a script that he wrote in 6 weeks, and just shot so much for editing, and then it tested well with Warner Brothers, so they wrestled the film away from him and basically edited it up to be more like the theory is they edited it up to be more punchy. Like they essentially handed the film over to a what's it called, like Trailer Park, which is a editing studio that does movie trailers. So if Suicide Squad looks chaotically edited and weird with like reshoots, stuff like that, that's why. Justice League also became a victim of this as well. Justice League, apparently, with everything that they had shot, Warner Brothers wasn't happy with it. It wasn't testing well. And this all happened very early within what's known as the assembly cut. So, little history here. So, because a lot of people think this narrative is just that, Snyder completed the film and Warner Brothers didn't like it and they forced Josh Whedon to do reshoots. A little more complicated than that. I'm sure everyone has gone over this by now, but just in case, let's just reiterate it here. Zack Snyder was working on an assembly cut. An assembly cut is when you shoot everything that you have for a film. It's all on there in just this one big timeline. It's kind of in sequential order, but nothing is really finished. Like, the special effects are not finished, so obviously stuff with like Cyborg wouldn't be completed. Your character Steppenwolf is not there. There might be stand-ins. You might have like some storyboards or some very like basic like CGI blocking here and there, but essentially the film was not finished in the assembly cut. So looking at the assembly cut, Warner Brothers basically, it's seemingly kind of like cut Snyder off the project. I mean, there's some conflicting reports about how this affected him with like, his family. He was dealing with the death of a child at the time, but essentially it was turned over to Josh Whedon, and Josh Whedon had to basically take everything that Snyder had shot up to that point and then dice it up and make the 2017 director's Whedon version that we saw in theaters. And so a lot of people were under the impression that because Snyder did an assembly cut, that he was in the initial phase of production, that there was a Snyder cut. And so this weird hashtag started up for the longest time, release the Snyder cut, release the Snyder cut, as though Warner Brothers was just sitting on this version and that they were, that they weren't going to release it. This was a huge misconception in 2017 when, and we still, this has had a resurgence within film news for a while, which I find weird, which is that, which is the theory that, there are these director's cuts that are just like, that are ready to release on the, on the cutting room floor. And the thing is that they're not. So like, the thing is they're assembly cuts. So we had this for the longest time in 2017. They were saying stuff like, oh man, there's a 3-hour cut of The Last Jedi, or there's a 4-hour cut of Blade Runner 2049. There isn't. There's an assembly cut. There's a cut where you have all this footage that isn't really completed, and there's no visual effects there that are finished that make up the assembly cut. Like, it happened with Black Panther. I think Black Panther said there's like a 3.5-hour cut of that. There isn't. Like, we're still reporting on this now. Like, there's this report that like, oh, there's the Mission Impossible Fallout had a 4-hour cut. No, it didn't. It had an assembly cut. It wasn't finished. There's a similar example of how this happened with another DC film, Superman 2. Superman 2 was a film where Richard Donner started work on it and basically left Warner Brothers over creative differences. It was passed on to another director. And basically, like, during an interview with Margot Kidder, she basically said, oh, there's a Richard Donner cut of the film. It was so great. And they should release that. When, in fact, the cut wasn't finished because, for one, Donner didn't finish shooting everything. So everything in his version wasn't ready. Now, of course, yes, we did get the Richard Donner cut on DVD. But the thing is, it was not just like something they plucked off the shelf. It had to be assembled. And basically, Donner had to rely on footage that was already shot. He had to rely on test footage. And he had to integrate special effects back into the film. Most notably about the difference between Superman 2, the theatrical cut, and the Donner cut, is that they got footage back for Marlon Brando used in the film. Like, in the theatrical cut, Marlon Brando's presence for the hologram of Jor-El wasn't used, and they got the rights back to it around the time of Superman Returns. So they put it back into the film. So basically, yeah, like Zack Snyder's version of Justice League, it could be made, but it wasn't like a release of it. It's not like it was just like sitting in the vaults and it would just be plucked off and just thrown onto HBO Max. It had to be made. Same thing as, the Superman 2. It had to be assembled. So what you're essentially doing is you're making another film here. And it pretty much is. Like, I mean, to its credit, there is a lot that's different in Snyder's cut from the from Whedon's cut. The ending's a lot different. There's more time for character development. There's better designs of the characters, and we get to know a little bit more about the villains of Darkseid. So a lot of people, kind of feel vindicated. They feel like Snyder had robbed them of a great Justice League film. And speaking as someone who kind of dug the Whedon Justice League film, like it wasn't a perfect film, but it did have a lot of elements that I was hoping to see in a Justice League film that did come about. And thankfully, it seemed like the DCU was learning a little bit from the mistakes here and there. After seeing that and then coming to Zack Snyder's Justice League, I'm still kind of like, I don't really feel different. Like, I mean, there are aspects of Snyder's film that I like more than the Whedon cut, but at the same time, there's all these other problems with a Zack Snyder film that are new here that just don't work. That, like, to its credit, though, I will say this is the most Zack Snyder of Zack Snyder films ever made. Like, all of his hallmarks are present here. The slow motion is absurd. It's all over the place. It goes on for too long. The pretentiousness of the characters, like holding stuff up more seriously than it should be, with almost this kind of like unaware tongue-in-cheek aspect to it, is frothing throughout this film. The dramatic staging too, to make it seem like every single shot is way more important than it really is, which is, you know, more of that pretentiousness, is in full force. So to its credit, I will say this: if you really dig Zack Snyder's films, like, oh, the other thing too, forgot to mention is the Christ imagery. Snyder always has this like huge Christ imagery in his stuff, and here it's like it's full force with everything it has. So to its credit, if you're a big Zack Snyder film fan, if you like his stuff, this is probably going to be really high up on your list if you love all the stuff he does, and you're willing to love it to a degree that it gets ridiculous. If you love slow motion and you want it in chunks, huge long stretches, you will get that in this film. If you love like his Christ allegories that are in full force, you will get that in this film. If you like scenes that linger for too long and have this like grandiose nature to it, you will love this film. All that being said, I wish I could love this film more. Like I don't have an issue with it being 4 hours for most of it. Like, to its credit, the film works better because we do get to focus a lot more on Victor Stone, Cyborg, played by Ray Fisher. And clearly, like, Cyborg is the more central character who we get to know in this film. He has a better arc. We get to learn more about his origins, his moral questioning of, you know, what he wants out of life, his relationship to his father. He has a lot of development here, which I think is really great. Because, like, here's a character who we're introduced to in Justice League, and instead of feeling like rushed where it was in the previous film, here it feels like, you know, it's pretty much the Cyborg film, more or less. We get to know a lot about Cyborg. He plays the heaviest role. He has a lot to do, and I really did genuinely like him in there. I wish I could say the same for Flash. I mean, the motivations for Flash, I think, are better in the Snyder Cut. But his first introduction, I thought was just awful. Mostly because, like, it's, you know, it involves, like, you know, so Ezra Miller, playing Barry Allen, the Flash, is trying to get his dad out of jail by taking on an odd job so that he can, you know, attain a law degree and basically get his dad out of prison. He has a lot of, I mean, you do get to understand a little bit more of his plight. Some of it was in the previous film, but you do get to understand a lot more of that. His opening scene where he stops a woman from being killed in a car crash just feels like par for the course and elongated to such a degree where you have, like, the slow motion sesame seed that causes the crash, and the extensive scene that follows of Flash saving this woman from flying out of her car, getting into a car wreck. It's a good scene that shows that he's a hero kind of working in the shadows, but at the same time it goes on for so long with that slow motion that it is time for a full music video. And you're going to find that throughout the film, this is the case. Anytime there is like a slow motion sequence, the film has more than enough time to play an entire music track to make it a music video. Like, Aquaman walks out onto a pier to basically take a drink and take a dip into Atlantis. All shot in slow motion, all given enough time to let this music play throughout. And you'll find this happens way too often in the film. Um, I did like the fact that we got more of Darkseid. I love that we learned a little bit more about Steppenwolf and why he's doing what he does. Why there's more desperation to him. You understand why he wants to conquer instead of just being your standard villain of the week who thinks that, conquest is cool. Here we reveal that he's working for Darkseid to pay off a debt. And he actually kind of I love that Darkseid is presented as more fearful here. However, in order to present that fearfulness, we get once more another series of dream sequences. We got them in Batman v Superman, and here we get 3 times as many about speculation on the future. And wow, does it go on for so long? Especially the epilogue is just it's an extended sequence from Batman v Superman of Nightfall, where Batman has that dream that he's going to live in a world where Darkseid takes over, and Superman is controlled by Darkseid, and he has to work alongside villains, and a lot of people that he's loved and known are dead, and that that he has to work alongside the Joker, and it's another prologue scene, and it feels like a whole lot of nothing. We also introduce a lot of characters who appeared in other films. Like we get Willem Dafoe from Aquaman is in here. He doesn't really do anything except, push Aquaman a little bit further, but there isn't much to him than that. We also get the Martian Manhunter in 2 scenes that mean nothing. Like, when they first introduce him, they reveal it as kind of like a shock, like, oh, this character who you've known since Man of Steel, in a small supporting role, is actually the Martian Manhunter. You're like, okay, but why? Like, especially the scene they introduce him is in a crucial moment where Martha Kent is trying to connect with Lois Lane after the death of Superman. And it's a very tender moment, but when you reveal that Martian Manhunter was kind of in on this scene, it's kind of both it kind of robs that scene of a resonance for the character, and also kind of robs it of what you can do with Martian Manhunter. Because is this all that he's gonna do? And by the end of the film, that's the last scene. They introduce just Martian Manhunter. It's oh, wait, by the way, he's here. Maybe he'll show up in another film, maybe. And it's just it feels like this film, it does have a little bit more completeness to it when by the time the film ends and the Flash has to spin back time a bit, which I thought was pretty cool. It's a classic Donner move there. I especially dug the way that they dispatched with Steppenwolf and basically make themselves more of a threat known to Darkseid, but it still feels like they're teasing to another film that I don't know if it will come. Warner Brothers is willing to spend the 80, I think it was 80 to $100 million for this redo, but are they really going to keep going with this? I don't know. I don't know if they could keep going with this. They might. I mean, but I mean, how? Because now they're starting this whole restore the Snyderverse thing, and I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if Warner Brothers is going to be willing to do that. If they might depending on the reaction to it. But as it stands, this feels like a Justice League that it still feels like the 2017 film. It feels like it's almost there. It's almost that Justice League film that I want. It almost has that resonance, the story of the new gods that they keep harping on, which I did like that sequence where they show Darkseid's origins, which that was really cool, especially since we get more of the Green Lanterns in that scene. I'm a huge Green Lantern fan, so I love that. But it just feels and it also the other thing too is this one was rated R, and it feels like it's it's a lot like Batman v Superman. It's a soft R where it feels like it has to amp up so much to make it R-rated. There's a scene where pretty much any scene where someone is thrown into a wall, there's huge blood splatter behind them, which clearly looks like CG blood, which is added in there. It's oh, we really need to make it R-rated. And yeah, Batman says the F word and stuff like that. There is some gore here and there, which kind of warrants it, so it's fine. But I couldn't help but think of the film from last year we had, a direct-to-video film called Apocalypse War, which actually does show this this invasion by Darkseid of Earth that Snyder keeps teasing in all these films, and actually has it very violent and gritty and brutal, and feels like it has a sense of completeness that has like this level of hope and despair and just this gruesome brutality to it that, you know, maybe I don't know. It's like, it's similar to how I felt after like Assault on Arkham, comparing it to Suicide Squad. I feel like if we do have another Justice League film, it's going to have that comparison where, okay, if you are going to have this war, if you are going to go full Nightfall, like the premonitions keep saying, hopefully, if that's Snyder's intent here, I don't know if he's going to keep doing it, but if that's the intent, then I don't know if, you know, I don't know how close of a comparison that's going to be. Because, like, I remember that being a big thing. Oh, Batman's going to say the F word. And then I remember, like, well, in Apocalypse War, like, I think, like, 5 characters, like, say the F word at some point. And a lot of times, it doesn't feel like it's made to be, like, punctuating. It just feels like something that happens within that story. So I wish I could like the film more, but it's not even so much that it goes on for too long. It's just that I think it elongates so many scenes that don't need to be elongated. You can do more. I mean, I appreciate the stuff that Snyder puts into the film, but there's still so much to it that I'm like, man, you don't need this. And the fact that you're introducing characters like Martian Manhunter and throwing Willem Dafoe into the mix here, it doesn't feel like it warrants it. Like, there's so many scenes that still feel like, okay, this doesn't work. I don't know why you have this here. So yeah, it's not a bad film. Like, here and there, it actually kind of works. I did really enjoy the film. I never found myself fully bored, even though I was kind of laughing at some points where, like, Aquaman is hailed by this community that apparently smells his clothes whenever he runs off to the ocean. Souvenirs, I guess, but yeah, like, it's almost there. It's still, like, it feels like I didn't feel the same way when I watched Superman 2: The Donner Cut, where I feel like, okay, actually this fixes a lot. This actually works better. I'm looking at the Snyder Cut and I'm still like, yeah, there's a lot that I could understand why Warner Bros. Would want to cut some of this stuff here. I mean, I don't fully agree with Whedon's cut. Obviously, there's stuff in there that doesn't work. Like, I don't think the romantic tension between Wonder Woman and Batman in the Whedon cut, I don't think that works. Mostly because it's relegated to, like, what, 2 scenes? And they do nothing. But yeah, like, I mean, I do appreciate the effort here. Because I do like the film, but it doesn't need a lot of the stuff that's there. So I'm still just kind of left going, oh, okay, well, it's still almost the Justice League movie I wanted, so. Oh, boy. I wish I could like it more. I really, really wish I could like it more. Oh, boy. Well, I think that's all the time I have for today. Yeah, I think that's about it for that. All right. Well, cool. All right. Well, thank you for joining us here. This has just been like a little test. I'm gonna try to see if I can do this regularly. See if I can dice it up here. Little bit new to this format. I think it works better here. Like, I've been working on Streamlabs to get this working here. It might be doing a little bit better, but we'll see. Okay. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Let's try it at end screen here. There we go.